I wanted a real dinner tonight, but I had to start off by shucking some corn. A lot of people don't realize that cutting off the corn at the bottom where it starts and flipping it upside down will let you peel off all of the leaves and all of the silk at one time. I didn't even realize that was an option until recently. But I do recommend that if you're going to do this, just go ahead and cut off all of your bottoms at the same time. On this cob in particular, I forgot to cut off a singular strong leaf on the bottom and had a hard time getting it off. Now that corn is shucked, let's get started on the real dinner. Honey garlic chicken, and the stars are going to be the soy sauce and the honey. So first we're going to use half a cup of honey for our sauce and 4 tablespoons of soy sauce. So we're making our sauce first just to take a little bit of a burden off of us later down the line, because we still do have a lot of other things we need to do. So we're just going to mix together the soy sauce and honey, and we're going to add in our garlic a little bit later. I'm going to be using fresh garlic, but I'll put how much garlic powder you can use in the comments. So you really just want to mix everything together well, and all you have to do is to sit it to the side until later. Now this is where I taste it to decide if I need to come up with a new video idea. And I just sit it off to the side, and we're going to get started on those dinner rolls everyone keeps asking about. So you're going to need a small saucepan because we're going to have to make a bit of a slurry with 1.5 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of milk, and 2 tablespoons of water. If you've made gravy before, it's going to start sounding really familiar. We're essentially making a roux to make the bread more fluffy. So on about medium-high heat, you'll just stir it all together until it becomes a paste. Sorry for the steam. Once you get this paste consistency in about 2 or 3 minutes, just go ahead and let it cool all the way down because it has to be absolutely cool before we introduce it to the rest of our ingredients. So now it's time to wake up our yeast, so I put half a cup of milk and a 1/4 cup of water in a bowl and set them in the microwave for 15 seconds before actually adding in the yeast. Once it's out of the microwave, I go ahead and add in 2 tablespoons of sugar and just stir it all together so it can get dissolved. Crazily, I've had this jar of yeast since before Thanksgiving, and I'm going to be using a teaspoon and a 1/4 of the yeast. So that's about half of a normal packet for 8 rolls. And then I like to stick it in the oven with the light on just to help it rise and wake up. While that's in the oven, you'll want to go ahead and skedaddle over to your mixing bowl and add in all of your dry ingredients. So 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 cups of flour, and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. And we're just going to whisk everything together so we can make sure everything is evenly distributed before we start mixing. If you're new here, I'm Amari. This is just how I cook. It helps me mentally slow down, and I just really like to teach other people. So look out for me at least twice a week. I'm using my stand mixer because I was feeling impatient, but if you have a wooden spoon in a bowl, you'll be fine. Go ahead and dump your roux in there and melt your 2 tablespoons of butter. And you'll be needing 1 large egg. Also, am I crazy or are eggs smaller lately? By this point in the process, your yeast should look kind of like this and be foamy. Now we're going to start off by pouring in the yeast and all of our liquids, and we're just going to put our butter in right on top of that. So I like to do a first mix until the butter and liquids are just fully absorbed, and as soon as they're fully absorbed, I stop the machine and I add in my egg. And if I have to, I scrape down the sides. It's time to add in my egg. There goes my family fortune. The entire mixing process normally just takes about 7 to 10 minutes for me in my mixer, but if you're doing it by hand, it might just take about 15, so not too crazy. Sometimes I like to give it a few pokes just to see how it's going, because this should be tacky but not quite sticky. Normally when you add in eggs and butter and make an enriched dough, you want to go for tacky and not sticky, and you want it to be smooth. I don't know what it is exactly, but something about it right here is just so pretty to me. So about 7 minutes in, we're going to check the progress, and we're going to see if there's a window painting, which is where you're able to stretch the dough enough to see the light through without it breaking. This is what we're looking for right here. I decided to keep mixing for about another minute, and in the meantime, I just oiled up my bowl that I was going to let it rest in. Once again, you want your dough to be able to stretch like this and window pane without tearing. When it's time to get this out of the bowl, I absolutely recommend making sure your fingertips are wet or that your hands have oil or flour on them so it doesn't stick to you. It shouldn't at this stage, but just in case. And I'm going to scrape the bottom of the bowl, transfer everything over, and form my dough into a ball. And after you get it balled up, you just want to cover it with a wet towel or put a lid on it and set it in a warm place for about an hour and a half until it doubles in size. I really like the oven with the light on. And now that it's doubled in size, you don't have to roll it out or anything. We're just going to straight up start forming our balls of dough, and we're going to make 8 and stick them into any pan that will fit them. I like putting parchment paper on the bottom just to make the cleanup easier, and just to be extra certain they do not stick. If you don't have any parchment paper, it's also a really good idea to just put butter in the bottom of the pan. Despite my grand knowledge and wisdom, I always fail to get all of my dough balls to be the same size, so just do the best you can with what you got, just like me. At this point, you're pretty much out of the woods. You just have to finish forming all of your rolls, and when you get done, just rub some oil over the tops of them and let them sit under a moist towel somewhere safe for 30 minutes. And after the 30 minutes are up, we're just going to do an egg wash, which is just 1 whisked egg with 1 tablespoon of water. And at the end of this, we're just going to preheat the oven to 375, and we'll come back for the egg wash later. Now it's time to work on our chicken. By the time we get done working with the chicken, the oven will be preheated, and halfway through the cook time, it'll be time to put the bread in the oven. You'll just want to mix together a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour and 1 teaspoon of ground paprika. I'm going to be using 6 bone-in chicken thighs, but you can use any cut of chicken that you have. Just make sure that you have a pan big enough to fit all of your pieces. So now I'm going to fully cover the bottom of my pan with oil. Next up, you'll want to make sure you pat your chicken dry with a paper towel, because we're going to be covering it in the flour and paprika mixture and just sticking it straight into our pan that we're going to bake them in. Just be sure that you shake off any excess flour. Now you'll want to sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper on top. I'm scared to do more than that since that soy sauce is normally pretty salty on its own already. So now it's time to go ahead and mince up those 4 cloves of garlic, but if you don't have cloves, you can just use a full teaspoon of garlic powder. Now we're just going to go ahead and put that garlic or garlic powder directly into our sauce from earlier and mix it all together really well. Here it just gets really simple. Just pour all of the sauce over your chicken. You also want to be sure they're covered in sauce on both sides. You may have to turn them over once or twice. This next part is totally optional, but I had an extra packet of red pepper flakes, so I sprinkled them all over all of the thighs because it just goes really well with the sweetness of the honey. Now all you have to do is cover them in foil and bake them for 30 minutes covered and then for 20 minutes uncovered. I'm putting these on the bottom rack and I'm saving the top rack for the rolls. Now we're going to put that egg wash on, which is the 1 whisked egg with 1 tablespoon of water. At this point, it took me around 10 minutes to get the chicken together, and after they baked for 20 minutes, it was already the 30 minutes for the rolls, so I went ahead and stuck them on that top rack. Now we're back to the corn, and I'm just totally winging it. I'm going to saute the corn on the stovetop with onions, bell peppers, and seasoned with paprika, salt, and pepper, and some fresh dill at the end off the heat, because I just had extra dill lying around for one of my last recipes. Fresh dill is so underrated, and I feel like everyone should try it at least once. I'm just absolutely obsessed with it now. I absolutely love green bell pepper with corn because it gives you such a nice fresh crunch. So I think I'm just going to use about half a cup, which is normally just 2 sides of a bell pepper. Off camera, I'm making some plain white rice too. This Dutch oven is honestly my favorite kitchen thing that I own, and I use it for literally everything. I'm just going to melt 2 tablespoons of butter in the bottom and add in my veggies, paprika, salt, and pepper. And we're just gonna stir until the onions become translucent and the whole mixture just becomes very fragrant. You can also just cook them until some of the corn kernels lightly blister for like 5 minutes on 7. Once your veggies are done, turn off the heat and take your chicken out of the oven to remove the foil. Now we're just gonna re-add the sauce to the top of all of the thighs and bake them for the remaining 15 minutes. And because I'm trying to spread the message of fresh dill, I'm gonna make you guys watch me get my dill ready for the corn while everything else is going. Now I just put my corn in a bowl and added my dill and stir everything up. Once the rolls are brown on top, they're ready, but the chicken's also ready at about the same time. So now we're good to go, but I still gotta check the temperature and make sure it's at least 160. Now your dinner's ready, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in a few days.